Weeds don't sleep. But what if I told you that some plants can actually fight back while you rest? There are garden warriors that spread their roots so densely, shade the soil so completely, and grow so vigorously that weeds simply give up trying to compete. These aren't magical solutions or high-maintenance prima donnas. They're tough, beautiful plants that work for you around the clock. Before we dig into these 5 incredible weed suppressors, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our practical gardening advice. Hey there, garden friends. Thanks for stopping by today, and if you find this helpful, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. Picture this. It's late spring, and you notice something remarkable where you planted creeping thyme last year. There's now a thick, fragrant carpet that's completely choked out every single dandelion and crabgrass sprout. Creeping thyme is one of those plants that seems almost too good to be true for American gardeners tired of pulling weeds. This low-growing perennial herb forms a dense mat that rarely exceeds 3 inches in height, and once established, it's nearly impossible for weeds to break through. It sends out stems that root wherever they touch the soil, creating an interconnected network that holds the ground hostage in the best possible way. In areas with cold winters, like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, it dies back somewhat, but returns with vigor each spring, while in milder climates, it stays evergreen year-round. The leaves release a wonderful herbal scent when you brush against them. Start with well-drained soil, because thyme absolutely despises wet feet. Space plants about 6 to 12 inches apart, depending on how quickly you want coverage. Water regularly for the first few weeks until you see new growth, then back off significantly because thyme is remarkably drought-tolerant once established. Full sun is ideal, though it can handle light shade. One mistake many gardeners make is over-fertilizing thyme. This plant actually prefers lean soil, and too much nitrogen makes it grow leggy and less dense. For pathways, choose a very low variety like elfin thyme, which tolerates light foot traffic. For larger areas, varieties like pink chintz or red creeping offer more visual interest with their colorful blooms. Here's a bonus. Creeping thyme is actually edible, so you can harvest sprigs for cooking while it's busy suppressing weeds. The flowers attract beneficial insects including native bees and tiny predatory wasps that help control garden pests. Have you ever tried using thyme as a ground cover, or are you thinking about giving it a shot this season? Now let's talk about a plant that might already be in your lawn, but you've probably been fighting it instead of celebrating it. White clover has gotten a bad reputation in American lawn culture, but it's actually one of the most brilliant ground covers you could choose if you want to eliminate bare soil where weeds thrive. This low-growing perennial legume creates a thick, lush carpet that stays green even during summer droughts when conventional grass turns brown and crispy. The round white flowers appear in late spring and early summer, creating a charming cottage garden effect. What makes clover truly special is its ability to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, which means it's literally fertilizing itself and nearby plants while it smothers out weeds. In the South, where heat and humidity can be brutal, clover stays surprisingly vigorous with occasional water, while in northern states it survives harsh winters and bounces back beautifully each spring. You can sow white clover from seed, which is incredibly economical. Just broadcast the tiny seeds over prepared soil in early spring or fall. Keep the soil consistently moist for the first couple of weeks while germination happens. After that, clover develops a surprisingly deep root system. Mixing clover seed with sand or vermiculite helps with even distribution. One common mistake is seeding too heavily. You only need about 4 to 8 ounces per 1,000 square feet. Once established, clover needs almost no maintenance beyond occasional mowing if you want to keep it tidy. If you're using it in garden beds around vegetables or ornamentals, it makes an excellent living mulch that keeps the soil cool, retains moisture, and prevents weeds from germinating. Here's something fascinating. Clover actually improves soil structure over time as its roots die back and decompose, adding organic matter. Some gardeners worry about bees on their clover flowers, but you can simply mow before flowering or choose a low-flowering variety like mini clover. What's your take on letting clover grow in your lawn or garden beds instead of treating it like a weed? Let me introduce you to a plant that transforms from spring freshness into summer shade so thick that weeds don't stand a chance underneath. Hostas are often dismissed as just boring shade plants, but they're actually powerful weed suppressors that get better with age. These perennial beauties form massive clumps with leaves so broad and dense they create a living umbrella over the soil. Once a hosta reaches maturity, usually after 3 to 5 years, it can spread 2 to 4 feet wide, and beneath that canopy, absolutely nothing else can grow. Those huge leaves overlap like roof shingles, blocking every ray of light that weeds need to germinate. From the upper Midwest to the Southeast, hostas adapt beautifully to different climates. Plant hostas in spring or fall, spacing them according to their mature size. They prefer rich, well-drained soil with plenty of compost. While famous for loving shade, many varieties tolerate morning sun or dappled light, and some newer cultivars even handle full sun in northern areas. Water deeply during their first season. After that, they're quite forgiving. Don't plant hostas too close together, hoping for instant coverage. Crowding leads to poor air circulation and increases slug problems. Slugs are the main pest, especially in humid climates, but you can manage them with diatomaceous earth or by choosing slug-resistant varieties with thicker leaves. One surprising fact is that their flowers are actually quite fragrant in some varieties and attract hummingbirds. Are you already growing hostas in your shady spots, or does this make you want to give them a try? Here's something that might challenge what you think you know about ground covers. Sweet woodruff is a delicate-looking plant with starry white flowers that packs a serious punch when it comes to weed suppression. This old-fashioned perennial spreads through underground rhizomes, creating a solid mat of bright green foliage that stands about 6 to 12 inches tall. In late spring, the entire planting becomes covered with tiny white flowers that look like something from a fairy tale. Sweet woodruff thrives in shade where many other ground covers struggle, making it perfect for those difficult spots under trees where grass refuses to grow and weeds multiply overnight. It's particularly successful in regions with cooler summers, from New England down through the Appalachians. Plant divisions or potted plants in spring, spacing them about 8 to 12 inches apart in soil enriched with compost or leaf mold. This plant loves rich, humusy soil like you'd find on a forest floor. Keep it evenly moist during establishment. Sweet woodruff doesn't tolerate drought as well as other ground covers. Partial to full shade is essential. In too much sun, the leaves scorch. One common mistake is trying to grow it in heavy clay without amending the soil first. Once established, it requires virtually no maintenance beyond occasional watering during dry spells. Here's a fascinating tidbit. Sweet woodruff has been used for centuries in Europe to flavor May wine and contains coumarin, which gives it that distinctive sweet hay scent when dried. The plant can be somewhat aggressive in ideal conditions, so place it where you actually want solid coverage. Have you dealt with those tough, shady areas where nothing seems to grow except weeds? And could sweet woodruff be your solution? Now we're moving to something different, a plant that actually releases compounds that inhibit other plants from germinating nearby. Ajuga, also called bugleweed, is a fast-spreading ground cover with glossy, often colorful foliage that forms a dense carpet just 4 to 6 inches high. In spring, it sends up spikes of blue, purple, pink, or white flowers that attract all sorts of pollinators. The leaves come in varieties ranging from deep burgundy to bronze, variegated cream and green, or even chocolate brown. This tough little plant grows successfully everywhere from Texas heat to Minnesota cold. Plant ajuga in spring or fall, spacing plants about 6 to 12 inches apart. It tolerates a wide range of soils, though it performs best in loosened soil with compost. Ajuga handles everything from full sun to full shade, though in hot climates it appreciates afternoon shade. Water regularly until established, then it becomes quite drought tolerant. The biggest mistake gardeners make is planting it where they don't want it to spread, because spread it will enthusiastically. Think of ajuga as a solution for areas where you want permanent evergreen coverage. It works brilliantly on slopes where erosion is a problem and mowing is difficult. Remove flower spikes after blooming if you want to prevent self-seeding. Crown rot can be an issue in poorly drained soil, so ensure good drainage. Here's an interesting fact. Ajuga has been used in traditional medicine for its mild astringent properties, though it's primarily grown today for ornamental value and ground cover abilities. Would ajuga's aggressive spreading habit be a blessing or a curse in your particular garden situation? I saved the one that surprised me most for last, and it's a plant you might never have considered as a weed suppressor. Sedum, particularly the low-growing varieties like Sedum spurium or Sedum acre, creates such a tough, succulent carpet that weeds simply can't compete. These drought-tolerant ground covers spread through creeping stems that root as they go, forming a dense mat of fleshy leaves that store water like tiny reservoirs. In summer, they burst into bloom with starry flowers in shades of yellow, white, pink, or red that attract butterflies and beneficial insects. What makes sedum absolutely brilliant for weed control is its ability to thrive in the worst possible conditions: poor soil, blazing sun, rocky terrain, slopes where nothing else wants to grow. From desert-like conditions in Arizona to rocky New England hillsides, sedum adapts and conquers. Plant sedum in spring or early summer, spacing small plants or divisions about 6 to 12 inches apart. They prefer well-drained soil and actually perform better in lean, rocky conditions than in rich garden soil. Full sun is ideal, though some varieties tolerate light shade. Water sparingly during establishment, maybe once a week if there's no rain, then back off almost completely. Sedum is incredibly drought-tolerant once established, and overwatering is one of the few ways you can actually kill it. These plants spread moderately fast, not as aggressively as ajuga, but steadily enough to fill in within a season or two. One mistake gardeners make is planting sedum in areas with poor drainage or heavy clay that stays wet. This leads to rot and disappointing results. If you have heavy soil, amend it with sand and gravel or plant sedum in raised areas. After a few years, sedum plantings can get leggy or develop bare patches in the center. Simply divide them in spring or fall and replant the vigorous outer sections. Here's something you might not know. Many sedum varieties are evergreen or semi-evergreen, meaning they provide year-round coverage and color, even in winter when most other ground covers have gone dormant. The fleshy leaves often take on burgundy or bronze tints in cold weather, adding unexpected beauty to the winter garden. Could sedum be the answer for those hot, dry spots in your yard where you're tired of fighting weeds every summer? Now let's talk about a bonus strategy that multiplies the effectiveness of all these weed-stopping plants. The key isn't just choosing the right plants, it's understanding how to layer them and combine them for maximum coverage and minimum maintenance. Think about how plants grow in nature. They don't leave bare soil exposed. They fill every available niche with something living. In your garden, you can mimic this by using taller plants as the upper layer and low ground covers as the living mulch beneath them. For example, plant hostas as your main feature in a shady bed. Then fill the spaces between with sweet woodruff or ajuga. The hostas provide bold foliage and structure, while the ground cover knits everything together at soil level, creating an impenetrable barrier against weeds. In sunny areas, you might use ornamental grasses or shrubs as your upper layer, with thyme, clover, or sedum spreading beneath and around them. This layered approach not only suppresses weeds more effectively, but also creates a more natural, visually interesting garden that looks intentional and designed, rather than like you just planted random things. Timing, your planting, is another crucial factor that many gardeners overlook. The best time to establish most of these ground covers is in spring or fall, when temperatures are moderate and rainfall is typically more reliable. Spring planting gives plants the entire growing season to establish before facing winter stress, while fall planting takes advantage of warm soil and cooler air, encouraging root growth without the stress of summer heat. Avoid planting ground covers in the heat of summer. Unless you're prepared to water religiously, stressed plants establish slowly, and weeds can gain the upper hand during that vulnerable period. When you first plant, you'll need to stay on top of weeding until your ground covers fill in. This might seem counterintuitive, since the whole point is weed suppression, but those first few months are critical. Pull weeds regularly or use mulch between plants to keep weeds from getting established while your ground covers are still spreading. Once your chosen plants have knit together into a solid mat, your weeding days are essentially over, except for the occasional weed that blows in and tries to take root. And even those struggle to survive in the dense coverage. What combination of these weed-stopping plants do you think would work best in your specific garden conditions? Here's something that ties all of this together, and it's a perspective shift that can transform how you think about your garden. Weeds aren't really the enemy. They're just plants trying to do what all plants do: colonize bare soil and prevent erosion. The problem isn't that weeds exist, it's that we've created conditions where they thrive by leaving soil exposed and unplanted. When you fill your garden with these 5 powerful ground covers, creeping thyme, white clover, hostas, sweet woodruff, ajuga, and sedum, you're not fighting nature, you're working with it. You're creating a living system where desirable plants occupy every niche so completely that opportunistic weeds simply can't find a foothold. This approach saves you countless hours of back-breaking labor, reduces or eliminates the need for mulch, conserves water by keeping soil covered and cool, and creates habitat for beneficial insects and pollinators. It's gardening that works smarter, not harder. Let me share one more insight that experienced gardeners have learned over years of trial and error. The plants we've discussed today aren't just weed suppressors, they're ecosystem builders. Creeping thyme feeds pollinators and releases aromatic oils that can deter some pests. White clover fixes nitrogen and feeds the soil. Hostas provide cool, moist shelter for beneficial ground beetles and toads that eat slugs and other pests. Sweet woodruff's dense mat creates habitat for tiny predatory insects. Ajuga's early flowers provide nectar when little else is blooming. Sedum offers late-season nectar, and its fleshy leaves provide moisture for beneficial insects during droughts. When you plant these ground covers, you're not just suppressing weeds, you're building a healthier, more resilient garden that requires less intervention over time. The soil improves as roots break up compacted earth and organic matter accumulates. The diversity of plants supports a diversity of beneficial creatures. The garden becomes more beautiful, more productive, and more self-sustaining with each passing season. One final tip that can make or break your success with ground covers: be patient during that first season. It's tempting to look at a newly planted bed with small plants spaced a foot apart and think it will never fill in, but it will. Ground covers can seem slow at first as they focus energy on establishing roots, then suddenly they take off and spread with surprising speed. That first summer might require some weeding and watering, but by the second season, you'll notice a dramatic difference. By the third year, you'll have dense coverage that feels almost indestructible. The key is resisting the urge to plant too densely at the start, which wastes money and can lead to problems, or giving up too soon before the plants have had time to show you what they can do. Trust the process. Stay consistent with basic care during establishment, and let these plants do what they do best. So here's what I want to know. Which of these 5 weed-stopping powerhouses are you most excited to try in your own garden? Maybe you've got a sunny slope that's perfect for thyme and sedum, or a shady spot under trees where hostas and sweet woodruff could transform a problem area into a showcase. Perhaps you're ready to let white clover take over part of your lawn and discover how much easier life becomes when you work with nature instead of against it. Whatever you choose, remember that every square foot you cover with these plants is a square foot where you won't be pulling weeds next summer. If you found this helpful and want more practical gardening strategies that save you time and effort, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and drop a comment below telling me which plant you're planning to try first. I love hearing about your gardening adventures and learning from your experiences too. Until next time, happy gardening, and may your garden be lush, beautiful, and wonderfully weed-free.